Hello and welcome back to Power Squared. We're back with a new episode after a short break. Really looking forward to this one. We're going to show how to make production-ready code apps today, or at least the ALM side of things. So, Charles, where do we start with this?
Yep. Thanks, Josh. Hi, everyone. So we do have a couple of gotchas that come up as always. The way that we're going to start this today is we're going to start from the pipelines perspective and just show you how quickly and easily native Power Platform pipelines can be to get set up. So the first thing you want to do is open up this pipelines app, deployment pipeline configuration. You'll have to set up a pipelines host. We're assuming that you've already done that. If you haven't, you just follow the docs for that. Basically, you create an environment and you install the apps on it. It's pretty straightforward. Once you've done that and you've opened up your deployment pipeline configuration, you go into environments and then you need to create your environments in here as records. So the environments that we're using for this, we've got this one here, EPPC demo B. So I'll just type that in. Or I could, of course, just copy it from the admin center if I'm taking it from there. So like if we're looking in the admin center here, we've got EPPC demo B. I can click on that. And then here I can then copy it if I want to do that. We'll want the environment ID. So I'm going to take that from there. So we'll go back into this. This is our development environment. So this is where we're working on our code app. And then we'll put in the environment ID. And then we'll click on save. And then it's going to validate that ID. So it still says pending. If I click on refresh, still pending. But eventually it's not going to be pending because it's going to have checked it and it will change to success like the others. So, okay, still pending. It's taking a while. So then we'll move on to the next one.
I guess whilst that's pending as well, it's worth noting, just pointing out, it is in the docs, but Power Platform Pipelines does require managed environments. It is a licensed feature that you will need. So just something to take into consideration if you're wanting to use this method.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, code apps require premium anyway. So you'll have premium, so it doesn't really matter too much. And you'll want, if you've got your users already on premium, you'll want to take advantage of managed environments anyway, because that gives you so many additional benefits.
And if you're not on premium, you should be.
Definitely. So EPPC demo B, which is our development environment, now says success. I've just added code apps prod, which is where we're going to send our solution to, send our code app to. And that says pending. And now it says failed. Now, why has it failed? The environment needs to be in the same geography. So I didn't realize, but they're different. This is a United States one. Okay. So we need a new environment for this one. So yeah, that's a good thing to bear in mind, isn't it?
Always good to get caught out in some gotchas like that. So let's set up a new one in the right region, and we should be back to business.
Yeah. So we would normally give it a security group, but as we're just showing you this, it doesn't matter for now. We'll give it the URL so that it is easy to identify and then create it. And environments typically do get created pretty quickly. So I reckon with just a couple more of these, it's running now. It says it's created, another refresh, and it's ready. So it's actually called EPPC prod. So we can modify this record and then we can get the new environment ID, not the old one. It's locked. Okay, we'll delete it and we'll start again. So this is our target environment. Now, of course, you can have multiple target environments because we're doing prod here, but you might have a test, pre-production, and production. You can have as many as you like.
Yeah. I mean, generally in an ideal world, you'd tend to find there's a test or QA environment before you hit prod. So this is set up to allow for multi, deployments effectively. So yeah, good practice to have more than just one downstream environment.
Yep. So success, sorted. Now we need to create the actual pipeline for this. So how do you normally name your pipelines, Josh, if you're creating this?
I think it depends on the use case and what type of app or solution I'm deploying as part of the pipeline, to be honest. If it's for a particular business unit, then maybe that. If it's for a particular app, then, name it accordingly. So in this case, EPPC app dev to prod, perfect. I think that's perfectly descriptive enough. But each their own. I think there's not really a best practice there. Just make sure it's something that is, what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a description field. So if you want to give it a description to make it make more sense, you can do that. I've just added an existing deployment environment. So we created the environment earlier. This is where we link in our development environment. And then we don't add the target environment in here, do we? It's just development environment.
No, just the development
It's been a while since I've done this. And then in deployment stages, we do a new deployment stage. I'm just going to click on save, just make sure that is actually saved. So then in our deployment stage, so the name is locked in as EPPC app dev to prod. And then the name for this, we can say is dev to prod, for example. And then what we want to look at is if there was a previous deployment stage, this is where we would put that in. But what we're looking at here is the environment that we're going to deploy into, which is EPPC prod. And then here you can hook into this pipeline if you want with things like a pre-export step. So where something would happen before exporting, before deployment. And you can also specify if it's a delegated deployment. So maybe you want to use a service principal for it, for example.
Yeah, I think that's really important, isn't it? Just to call that out, because in a real world scenario, there's going to, you tend to use service accounts or principals to deploy. This supports that. You're probably going to have some sort of steps to check or approve, the deployments. This supports that as well. So it is what I'd like to term enterprise ready, more or less. There's maybe a few qualified things that would be nice to see, but by and large, you could do some of the kind of big hitting things that you might get picked up on in a large organization.
Yeah. And so when you tick that, you get the option of choosing stage owner or service principal. And then you put your service principal number, client ID in there, and then whether you want to allow sharing requests or not. So that's where you can do that if you want to do that. So now that we've created that, we've got our environments, we've got our pipeline, we should be pretty much good to go.
Yeah. So shall we move on to just taking a look at the app that we've got and what's behind the scenes a little bit and what we're actually going to be running through the pipeline today?
Yeah, sounds good. So this is the app that we created. This is one that I did for EPPC, which is the European Power Platform Conference. We were there back in the end of June, beginning of July, and I did a session on code apps. And this was the app that I generated as part of the demo for that session, showing how you can create something that has a lot of validation around it. So you're not just vibe coding, but you've got something that's quite strong that's being built. So less chance of bugs. And then what Josh and I have just done is we've modified this app a little bit so that when you rate a session, an email gets sent through to say what that rating was. And that email gets sent through to whatever you specify in this environment variable here, this email recipient. And we've left it as a default value of my email address. Of course, this is just to demo how things work with environment variables across environments as you're deploying. So yeah, that's basically what the app does. It's just rating sessions. It's pretty straightforward. It's got a couple of Dataverse tables with it, which will go through the environment with it, but of course not the data. And then we have the code app, which we've just shown you. And then we have a connection reference because of course we're sending an email. So we need to connect to Outlook in order to send that email. So it's a relatively simple thing, but even with a relatively simple app and solution, there's quite a bit going on. So let's look at the code. So we've got the code in here. And one of the things that Josh and I wanted to point out to you is that let's say that we want to get this into an environment. You'll typically do your Power Apps. Oh, sorry, you wouldn't even do that first. Would you do npm run build as your first thing, which would build it? And then after that, you do your Power Apps push. So you're doing two different commands there, and then that will send it off into the environment. And with your Power Apps push, for the first time, you'll want to specify which environment you're pushing it into and which solution you want to push it into. But once you're up and running with that, you don't really want to have to run through both of those commands each time. You want to make life easier for yourself. You can do that in the package.json. So in here, you can see that we've got this line of code here where it's saying the push command, and it's going to run that build, but it's going to do and push the app at the same time. So we've added this in here so that it's quicker. So instead of doing those two commands, we can just do npm run push, and it will do both at the same time. So it's going to build the app and then push it into the environment.
We'll include that in the description maybe as well. So if anyone wants to include that in their own code app in the package.json, you're able to. So don't worry about having to pause this. It'll be in the description below.
Yeah. And as you can see here, it gives you the usual thing where it tells you where you can play your app. And that is this app here. And if I refresh it, it tells us then that there's a new version and we can refresh that. And so you can see we've just pushed this through. So this is pushing it through to our dev environment, but now we want to get that into our production environment. So how would we do that? Well, we go back into our solution, and then in here, under pipelines, we should have that pipeline that we just created.
So this is where the magic happens, right? So we've got an app that's working, we're happy with it. We want to push it to production, we want to make a production-ready code app. This has already been thought of by Microsoft. They're enabling code apps to be used through pipelines within the Power Platform. So this is now the ability to do that. So we're going to push it through and we'll see the end result downstream.
So I just needed to refresh it. I'm not sure why, but it was only showing one pipeline there. It's a bit of a weird one. Just did a refresh on it, and then we can see the pipeline that we created. And then you can see here that it's going through to eppc prod. You can hover over that. It tells you the environment ID if you want to just double check it. And then this dev to prod that it has here is the deployment that we had created, dev to prod here. So it reflects in the names. So now all we need to do to deploy this is we don't do our Power Apps push or anything like that into another environment. No, we've already pushed it into this solution. It's solutionized now. Now we move our solution. So we click on deploy here, and then it's going to use the pipeline that we've already just chosen. And then when we want to deploy it, well, let's deploy it straight away.
This bit can take a little while, as now it's going to export the solution, isn't it, and run some checks, validation, and import into the target environment. One thing that I do like about using the Power Platform pipelines that some people don't catch is that the solution artifacts actually get retained as part of the deployment as well, so that it's a lot easier to actually fix forward if you needed to, if deployments fail, or for whatever reason you need that solution artifact. It's going to be there as part of that kind of time-stamped history of that deployment going through. So that's really nice to have as part of the pipelines.
Yeah, but the thing to bear in mind, of course, is that contains your built app, not your source code. So you need to protect your source code, put your source code into a repository, because it won't be saved inside of Power Platform. So it's saying that we don't have a connection in the production environment that we're deploying to. We need to create a new one. So we can enter a display name for this. I already gave it this display name here. I would have thought that they would automatically put that into there, but they haven't. So we'll do that for them. And then we'll create it. I'm already signed in. And it's sorted just like that. So then we can go to next. And then who is the email recipient? Well, this time it's going to be you, Josh, okay? And then it's bumping up the version number to 1.0.0.1, whereas it was all zeros before. It's generating an AI description, which you can turn on or off depending on whether you like it or not. And then we click on deploy. And then that's it. So it could take some time to go through this deployment. I've had moments in the past where it's taken up to 15 minutes. I've had other times where it's deployed very quickly. So it will vary depending on your solution and what's happening with the performance on the environments at that moment in time. So it's deployed a few seconds ago. So let's go and have a look at it. So if we go to the production environment here, Code Apps Prod, and I'll refresh the page. Now, of course, we've deployed it from our development environment into a production environment. So therefore, it's gone from unmanaged to managed. And It's not showing up there yet. Let me do a hard refresh on that because that could be the
You're
reason
in the
why.
wrong environment.
Well, yeah, because we created a new one. Thank you. Good point. EPPC prod.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that I was going to point out, of course, is going from unmanaged to managed, is that with a code app, even though we've got it unmanaged here, if we go to the objects and we find our code app, edit is grayed out. Now, of course, you can't edit a code app in the Power Apps portal or in the Maker portal. You have to edit it in code and then deploy it. And so, of course, it stands to reason that in production, especially in a managed solution, that you're not going to be able to modify that app either. So we can go into here. We get this message because it's in a managed solution. You cannot directly edit the objects. So you're also not supposed to be editing tables, connection references, and so on inside of here. And now what we can do is we can click on this. It will load for a second, and then it will give us a play button. So then we can play it. And then it breaks.
Because you haven't enabled code apps, which is a gotcha that I think us both out all the time still.
Do you know what? I honestly thought that they had enabled them by default, but of course they haven't done it yet. They would have told us, right? Or maybe
Yeah.
Okay, so it's finally deployed and we can open it up. And the first thing we get is the question about whether we want to allow the connector or not. And just for the audience's sake, it took a very long time to deploy and enable Power Apps. So yeah, bear that in mind. We've got no sessions in here, of course, because we haven't put the sessions through. But if we had got sessions in there, we would be able to give feedback on one. And then, Josh, it would go through to your email address. One of the things that we wanted to point out with environment variables is that, okay, thank you, yes. With environment variables is that the way that it's set up at the moment with code apps is that you can easily add an environment variable for a data source, so tabular data, but not for a text environment variable. That seems as though that's not currently allowed. So instead, if you want to use environment variables in your code app, you have to interrogate the environment variable Dataverse table, which is not really ideal because it means that then your end users need to have access to that environment variable table, which means that they'll have access to everything inside it. So if you have an environment variable you don't want them to read, that's unfortunate. They'll be able to read it just because you want to give them access to a different environment variable. So yeah, we're not really so happy with that, are we, Josh?
No, I think that's something that's needing to get fixed. So hopefully Microsoft sort it out soon. But yeah, it'd be good to be able to use environment variables like with other app types where they just work kind of out of the box in a secure manner. So hopefully we can see that soon.
So here are the environment variable tables that you'll need to interrogate. So if I click on environment variable value, and then I'll just get it to show all of the columns so that we can have a quick look through them. So yeah, you can see straight away, here's the value. So Josh, your email address. And then if we scroll along, you can see the definition here. It's loading that definition that we had previously specified. So what you'll have to do with your code app is interrogate this table in order to get those values out at the moment for text environment variables. And then the other thing we want to show you is if we go back to the solution, into our managed solution, and then we go to the environment variable, and here you'll see that it has changed to josh@uk.com. So as it's gone through that deployment pipeline, we've modified it, and then it will have changed. And that means that when we then rate a session, it's going to go through to Josh. So yeah, that's everything that we have time for today. And we've got a very cool video coming up for you next, which we're excited to do. But I'm not going to give any details on that just yet. If you like our videos, please subscribe, like them, and please feel free to comment about what you would like to see in future videos. And as always, thank you so much for watching.